In this video, we're going to look at the best workflow for color grading Apple log footage in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. First, we'll quickly go over how to record Apple log, and then we're going to look at an external SSD hub option for recording those big ProRes files onto. And later on in this video, we're also going to look at some cool new Apple log Luts, and I'm going to show you how to import Luts into DaVinci Resolve. Now, there's two ways to shoot Apple log with the iPhone. First, you're going to need an iPhone that supports Apple log, which will be the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max or a later model. Open the settings, go to Camera and Formats, toggle on Apple ProRes, and then select the log option under ProRes settings. Now you're going to need to switch to the regular video mode because Apple log isn't available in the cinematic mode. And you just tap here to enable it and you just start recording as you normally would. Bear in mind that Apple log produces this flat washed out look, which is going to be ideal for color grading later. As you probably know, if you want to shoot 60 frames per second 4K ProRes on your iPhone, you do need to attach an external SSD. And even if you don't want to record 60 frames per second, Apple ProRes does use a lot of storage space, so you're probably going to want to attach an SSD of some kind anyway. And as well, it's actually much more convenient for transferring footage for editing. One option that you can look at, which is pretty convenient, is this Freewell Pro SSD hub. So this is a grip with a Bluetooth trigger, and it lets you plug in an M.2 SSD. So the memory doesn't actually come with it, but you can put in your own memory, and you can actually put in up to 8 terabytes if you want. So that would be a massive amount of space, and you could happily shoot away ProRes, no problem, and you can shoot hours of footage. So this is Arca compatible, so that means you can pretty easily mount it to a tripod. Plus there's 3 cold shoe mounts for attaching mics, lights, or whatever else you need for your setup. The Bluetooth trigger is magnetic, so it just snaps onto the grip there and you can use it that way, or you can just take it off and you can use it as a remote shutter from up to 15 meters away. The whole grip rotates easily between portrait and landscape modes, so you can switch orientations in a few seconds without fiddling around. Now, if you don't need the grip part, you can actually stick this SSD holder directly onto the back of your iPhone using MagSafe. So you've got a USB-C port for connecting external mics, and there's another one for fast charging, up to 60 watts. So that can keep your phone alive for a bit longer while you're filming, because with an iPhone shooting ProRes, it does drain the battery pretty quickly. So this setup with the case does allow you to add an ND filter so you can keep your shutter speed down and you get a nice cinematic motion blur. So another way to record Apple log is to use a third-party app. For example, Blackmagic. There are many other apps which support Apple log. Dare I mention Filmic Pro? Oop, I just did. Anyway, the Blackmagic camera app, for example, it's free and it allows you to shoot Apple log in more efficient formats as well, like H.264 and H.265, as well as various different versions of ProRes. And you can even apply a preview LUT to see what your footage looks like after color grading. And I've already made a full guide on the Blackmagic app for this channel, so check that out if you want to go that route if you haven't already. So now that you've got some Apple log footage, open up DaVinci Resolve and import it. And these are a few shots that I quickly grabbed outside. So what I'm going to show you here is a good workflow if you have a number of Apple log clips. Rather than going through each clip, setting up the color management, we can add all these Apple log clips to a group, and then we can set up our color management for the whole group at once. First of all, open Preferences. To do that, you can use the Command plus comma or Control plus comma if you're using Windows, and then click the System tab. And here you've got this list of things that you can enable or disable, and I would say enable 10-bit precision. And if you're using some kind of Apple hardware to edit on, enable Mac display color profiles, and this one which says automatically tag Rec 709 scene clips as Rec 709A. Okay, close that window, select all the clips and then drag them onto the timeline. Now switch to the color page. Select one clip and then use the Command A or Control A for Windows buttons to select all the clips. Right click on one clip and then add into a new group. And I'm going to call this group Apple Log 1. So all those clips are now added to this group, and you can see that all the clips have this link icon in the corner. Once you add clips to a group, above the node window, we now have these 4 white dots and a drop-down menu. And this gives us 4 options: pre-group, clip, post-group, and timeline. And you can click these dots and use the drop-down menu to switch between them. First, we want to set up our pre-group color management. So we go to that. Now click on the effects button to open the effects window. Find the color space transform effect and then drag it onto the pre-group node. Now I want to configure the settings for this color space transform. So we want to set the input color space to Rec 2020 because that's the color space that iPhones shoot in when using ProRes Apple Log. Set input gamma to Apple Log. Output color space, we're going to switch to DaVinci Wide Gamut, and the output gamma to DaVinci Intermediate. DaVinci Wide Gamut gives you this bigger color space to work in when you're making adjustments. And DaVinci Intermediate is also actually a workspace setting that gives you the most room to work with. And now switch to the post group node, and again drag over a color space transform effect. For input color space, we want to put DaVinci Wide Gamut. Input gamma, we want DaVinci Intermediate, so that matches the output of the pre-group settings. And then for the output from this post-group node, we want Rec 709 for both of these output color space and gamma. So this is the color space that your video is going to be mastered in at the end when you export. If you're editing on an Apple system, choose Rec 709A, otherwise choose the regular Rec 709 output gamma. But basically it was just introduced in DaVinci Resolve 16, and it's kind of a fix for QuickTime because the way QuickTime works with Apple software sometimes does something weird to the gamma settings. So that's it, we've set up our clips so that we can now start working on their look individually, and we don't have to worry about color spaces and conversions because all of these clips are now in this group and being converted correctly. What we've done is set up our group to take our Rec 2020 Apple Log clips and then convert them to a wide intermediate gamut. We then work on them, making sort of creative changes or corrections to get the look we want. And then this setup is going to output our files as standard Rec 709, ready for uploading to a platform like YouTube. And once our group is set up like this, we can switch to the clip view for the node. And now we can click on a clip and we can start adjusting the colors, and then clip on the next clip and so on. So these changes are then going to be made individually to the different clips. If we want to make adjustments to all the clips, we can either select the pre-group or the post-group node and then make that change, and it's going to affect all the clips. So all in all, this is a pretty efficient way of working on our Apple Log clips. So let's just have a quick go on some of these clips, and first of all do some corrections and then do some more creative stuff. Open the color wheels and then make sure that you're seeing the primary color wheels. In the top right of the color wheel panel, there are 3 buttons. So we've got primary color wheels, we've got color bars, and then we've got log wheels. The primary color wheels and the color bars are basically the same tool, just with different interfaces. The log wheels, on the other hand, allow you to make more precise adjustments. For example, these RNG, which stands for range, so it's range up and range down settings. So for example, you can adjust how much the shadow wheel adjusts the midtones as well as the shadows. So you can bring it in and make it more precise, or make the range wider and then less precise. If you're starting out, then I'd probably forget about these wheels and just stick to the primary color wheels for now. Okay, so we're in the primary color wheels. Now, if you find that some of your shots are too dark or too bright, then you can adjust the exposure. And you can see here that we have wheels labeled lift, gamma, and gain, and these are useful for adjusting the exposure or brightness. Lift controls the darkest parts of the image, so in other words, the shadows. Gamma tweaks the midtones, so things like skin tones, for example, or anything else that's in the middle. And then gain adjusts the brightest parts, so the highlights. And if your footage is too dark overall, you can start by gently increasing gamma to brighten those midtones. And then we can use the gain to bring up the highlights without overexposing them. If it's too bright, lower the gain first to pull back those blown out areas, and then adjust gamma to balance everything out. Another trick is using curves, which are a little bit more visual. So you'll see this graph with this diagonal line, and you can drag parts of that line up or down to adjust specific brightness levels. So for example, if your shadows are too crushed or too dark, you can pull up the bottom left corner of the line just a little bit to lift the shadows. And if your highlights are too intense, you can drag down the top right corner. And don't forget about the scopes. So open the waveform scope, and this shows you a graph of brightness levels across your image. And if you see spikes hitting the top of the graph, you're going to find that your highlights are probably blown out. And if they're kind of squished at the bottom, then you're going to find that your shadows are probably crushed or, kind of too dark. But of course, it does depend on the look that you want. So we can use these as a guide while we're tweaking the lift, gamma, and gain. And of course, the key is not to go too crazy and just make small adjustments, and then just keep checking how it looks visually and on the scopes. And of course, you can use the Command D to enable and disable the node so that you can see before and after. Correcting the white balance is all about making sure the colors in your footage look natural. And that means that whites actually look white, for example, and you're not stuck with a kind of weird blue or orange tint. So one way to do this is to use the little eyedropper tool called the white balance picker above the color wheels. What you do is find something in your footage that should be neutral, like a white shirt or a grey wall, or even something black, basically an object that doesn't have any color in it. So just click on that with the picker, and then Resolve is automatically going to adjust the color temperature and tint to balance everything out. Now, if it still doesn't look quite right, then you can fine tune it manually. Also, if you maybe don't have anything that doesn't have any color in the frame, then you can't use this eyedropper. So again, you'll have to do it manually. Above the color wheels are two sliders. There's one for temperature and there's one for tint. So temperature adjusts how warm or orange or cool or blue your image looks, while tint fixes green or magenta shifts. So you just slide them left and right until everything looks more natural. Now, if you want to reset any of these things, you can just double click the name of the setting. And the scopes that you have on the right bottom side of the screen are also going to help you with this task. So let's switch to the RGB parade, and then we can see if one channel, like red or blue, for example, is higher than the others. And then we can adjust those levels until they're closer together. So, for example, this clip looks pretty balanced, but perhaps the red seems just slightly higher than the blue. So if we use the temperature slider and move it slightly towards the blue, that's going to even things out a little bit more. And once you've nailed the white balance, any issues with things like skin tones should be improved. Now, you do have to use your common sense here. So as far as all these clips are concerned, they're all actually shot in sunlight, daylight, and so we should expect a perfect balance in terms of red, green, and blue channels. But if your shot is under some kind of artificial lighting, maybe in a bar, for example, or a restaurant, and maybe people are sitting under orange lights or warmer looking lights or maybe cooler looking lights, then correcting the color so that these channels are perfectly balanced probably isn't going to work, because that evenly balanced white light wasn't there in the first place when you captured the shot. So that's just something to bear in mind. So that's some basic correction done. And once you've balanced everything, you're now ready to move on to more creative grading. So this is where you can give your footage more of a mood or a style. You can make it look more cinematic, you can make it look warmer and sunnier, or you can make it more dark and more moody. And that's just two examples. The first thing you want to do is just kind of think of the vibe that you're going for. So for example, if it's a happy outdoor scene, you might want to warm things up with some more golden tones. Or if it's a more dramatic night shot, you might want to cool it down with more of a blue look and deepen the shadows. So you can start with these primary wheels or curves, and you can just tweak the overall look. For example, if you want a warmer feel, you could push a little orange into the midtones using the gamma wheel. Or if you're going for something cooler, you could add some blue to the shadows. So we've already looked at the curves tool for exposure, but you can also use it for adjusting color. So for this clip of the fire hydrant, I'm going to pull the red down in the shadows. So first I'm going to click on the red button. And this means that I'm now only adjusting the red channel. Next, I'm going to add a point on the line, and this basically limits the adjustment just to the shadows. Then I'm going to pull down the line at the bottom, and this reduces the red in the shadows. And you can see that the shadows of the building in the background here are now going a little bit bluer. And I'm just going to make a very small adjustment here. So now I'm going to go back to the color wheels, and I'm going to add a little color boost. And this setting basically adds saturation, but only to the less saturated colors. And then I'm going to add a little bit of extra saturation, and the saturation setting adds saturation to all the colors across the whole image. And this is going to make the reds and the greens come out a little bit more. So again, if I use the Command plus D to switch the node on and off, you can see the difference. So what I've done here is add extra color contrast between the foreground and the background. So the blue in the shadows kind of makes them sit back more, and the red in the fire hydrant makes it kind of stand out more, kind of push forward. And as well, the grass is a little bit bluer, which also makes the red stand out more. So by doing these little color adjustments, the frame overall feels a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more three-dimensional. Now let's try this clip of the wildflowers quickly. And here I'm going to again add a little bit of color boost, a little bit of saturation, and I think it could do with some extra contrast. So I'm just going to boost that a little bit. It just subtly, and it just helps to make the image pop a little bit more. So really this is just basic color adjustment. And there's obviously much more that you can do with all these tools, but that's going to be for other tutorials. But now you've got a good workflow that you can use in DaVinci Resolve that you can use with your iPhone Apple log footage. Now, instead of going through this whole process, we can simply add a LUT. So if we added a LUT designed for Apple log into this setup that we've got now, it's probably not going to work. And that's because the LUT is designed to do the transforming part, the Rec 2020 Apple log to Rec 709 color space. So if I add it to a clip node here, that means that we have two transform processes going on, and it's just going to create a mess. So instead, we can start again with an empty node. So here I've just created a new timeline so that I can use LUTs for the clips instead of using that group system. So right click on a node, move your cursor over LUT in the drop down menu, and you're going to get this long list of LUTs to choose from. And these ones are the ones that actually come with DaVinci Resolve, but they're not designed to work with Apple log. So if you are new to LUTs, you should check out my LUT introduction video over on Patreon first to get an overview of how they work. But put simply, if you're adding a LUT to Apple log footage, you usually need a LUT that is specifically designed for that purpose. So to do that, we're going to need to import one into DaVinci Resolve. So I've got this LUT, which is a popular LUT amongst Apple log shooters called the One LUT, and this has been designed to be used specifically with Apple log footage, and it's intended to give the look of an Arriflex camera. So if I want to use that on my Apple log footage, first of all, I'm going to need to import it into DaVinci Resolve. Click the cog in the bottom right corner to open project settings, and then click on the color management tab. And then you've got to click this button which says open LUT folder. And this is going to open the folder that contains all the LUTs that are already imported into DaVinci Resolve. To import a new LUT, all you need to do is drag and drop your LUT into this folder. And back in the project settings, click the Update Lists button. Right-click on the node again, head to LUTs, and the newly imported LUT should be in this list for us to select. So the same people that created the one LUT have created a bunch of new LUTs. And these are also designed specifically for using with Apple log. We've got the GLOAT, which stands for the greatest LUT of all time. They've also sent me a set of LUTs called Logjam and another set of black and white film look LUTs. And these are all pretty cool looking LUTs, so kind of useful if you just want to do some quick color work on your Apple log footage. So I'm going to put links to all these LUTs in the description of this video. So these ones come in two formats. You've got a smaller file size 33 and you've got the larger file size 65. The 65 versions are more detailed, but they're also much bigger in size. So it's generally recommended to use the 33 for adding LUTs on your phone, maybe through the Blackmagic app, and use the 65 versions when importing to editing software like DaVinci Resolve. Shooting better videos with your iPhone isn't just about mastering the technical things. And over on Patreon, we've got courses that do cover technical stuff, but we also talk about the key creative stuff that will turn any video, whatever you're creating, whether it's family videos or adverts or travel videos, or you want to do short films, it doesn't matter. The basic principles of storytelling are the same. Most lessons only teach you how to be an operator. They teach you how to operate a camera, or operate an editing system, or a gimbal, and so on. But being a video creator is much, much more than just operating equipment. Over on Patreon, I've developed a system using things like reveals, which you can use for any type of video creation to make your videos much more engaging. Aside from that, over on Amazon, my book, Smartphone Videography Beginner to Advanced, is packed full of technical stuff as well as creative stuff. So you can get a good grounding for your videos, your smartphone videos from this book. So far we've got 19 reviews and I think 17 of them are 5-star. So I'm pretty happy with that, and thanks to everybody who's bought this book. We've sold quite a few hundred so far, and so I'm really proud of that. But apart from that, just be visionary.